All right, it is 1:21 here on the Schilling Show. Thanks so much for joining us today, and as always, we have a great program lined up for you. We're talking with Paul Jacob, who's the president of Citizens in Charge and the senior advisor at the Samuel Adams Alliance. Going to be giving a talk tonight at room 222 of Cabell Hall at the University, starting at 7:30. And you have a great title for this, so why don't you go ahead and hit us with the title of your talk?
The title is "The Right to Shut Up and Pay Your Taxes."
Oh boy! Oh boy!
I think oftentimes that's the way folks in government, unfortunately, view the rest of us, and so that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight.
Well, Charlottesville's the perfect place because they like their taxes. In fact, one member of City Council referred to taxes as her play money one time when I was on council, and my ears almost fell off of my head when I heard it, but that's certainly the attitude. So I want to talk a little bit more about term limits and then get into a couple of other things, because I remember very well hearing about U.S. term limits, in the news, maybe even seeing petitioners, although I don't recall that, and then hearing there were some constitutional issues. So what is the current status of the initiative, and is this a national initiative? Has it just gone to states right now?
Well, the term limits movement really swept throughout the 90s. In 1990, 3 states, California, Oklahoma, and Colorado, passed term limits. And Colorado passed term limits not only on their state legislatures, but on the congressional delegation. And that was really the first that a state had done that. In 1992, U.S. term limits was involved in working with states, 14 states, in fact, which is the most ever in history to vote on a single issue in a single election. And all 14 states passed term limits, most of them on their statewide officials, their state legislators, but also on their members of Congress. And by 1995, when the Republicans had taken over Congress, 23 states had passed term limits on their congressional delegation. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, which I happen to think was a very wrong-headed decision on the law as well as on the policy. But they're supposed to look at the law. Nothing in the law stops states from doing this, and yet they struck down those 23 state laws. And politicians in Congress are not very fond of term limits, and politicians at the state legislative level are not fond of it, nor at local levels. We've seen it passed in some cities where then the city council puts it back on the ballot 2, 3, 4 times. And of course the voters keep passing it each time or keep approving it. And it's happened in California. Back in February, they had another measure, their second attempt to weaken the term limits by making the people of California vote again on it. And again, the voters said, no, we like the term limits we passed. So at this point, we have 15 states throughout the country, including California, Florida, Michigan, Ohio, Missouri, some big states that have term limits for their legislature. 36 states have term limits for the governor. Virginia has the strictest in the country, a 1-term limit.
And I love that. And that's under attack all the time here. They're saying, well, the governor can't get anything done. I'm thinking the governor can get a lot done because they don't have to worry about running again. They focus on their agenda and then they get out.
Boy, that's exactly the way I see it. I think we had Doug Wilder, who pledged to not raise taxes. He didn't raise taxes. The only time I really regretted the term limits here in Virginia is I wanted to vote against Mark Warner for raising taxes when he promised not to. But I didn't get that chance. Maybe I'll get another chance for U.S. Senate or something. But it seems to me that it has worked well here. It's worked around the country in the states that have passed term limits and then had to re-vote because politicians try to change it on the ballot. Voters have voted by higher majorities to keep it the way it is than they originally passed it. And originally they were passing it with 65 and 75% of the vote. So voters love term limits. They understand them. They know that it doesn't usher in nirvana. Everything's not going to be perfect. But it gives us legislators who are more likely to think about what the law is going to do to them as regular citizens than how it's going to benefit their political careers. And that's the essence of what it does and why people like it so much.
See, I was thinking about what you said early at the beginning of the conversation on this, which was it went to the Supreme Court and it was struck down. But how can you have term limits on a president, which we do, but they say that it's unconstitutional to have it on members of Congress? I don't understand the logic there.
Well, they did pass a constitutional amendment to term limit the president, and people may not be aware of the history, but Washington stepped down after 2 terms, and it created a tradition that was followed until FDR and World War II and the Great Depression, and he served 4 terms. As soon as FDR was out, a move was made when Truman was in, and a constitutional amendment was ratified. I believe it may have been the fastest ratification in the history of the country to ratify the 22nd Amendment, which limits the president to 2 terms. So Congress voted for term limits for the president. People should also be aware that when the Republicans came in, Congress voted by over 80% to limit committee chairmen. So there are 4 term limits for everybody else,
Right.
but not for them. And they've refused to pass a constitutional amendment. Now, what the court ruled was that the only requirements that are allowed for members of Congress are what is written into the Constitution: age, residence, and citizenship. And now, if you look at that, though, a lot of states require candidates for Congress to collect signatures. They require filing fees. They require all kinds of things. So the courts have largely had a double standard, and that's why I think that the decision they made in U.S. term limits versus Thornton was so mistaken. But again, it was a 5-4 decision. I think we probably have not heard the last of term limits. This is a problem that even papers like the New York Times and the Washington Post that oppose term limits have begun more and more to see the problem with incumbency. And maybe now that Democrats are in, some of those papers will not be as gung-ho on doing something about incumbency. But I think increasingly people are realizing the power of incumbency is tremendous, and we have to do something, because once somebody is elected, it is nearly impossible to get them out of office unless they commit some terrible, crime
Even then.
And even then, oftentimes.
All right, News Radio 1070 WINA. We're talking with Paul Jacob, President of Citizens in Charge. He's going to be speaking tonight at UVA Room 222 of Cabell Hall, 7:30 p.m. And the topic is why government wants you to shut up and pay your taxes, a tax on voters. And you have to look no further than Charlottesville City Hall to see a tax on voters. Anyway, I think it'll be a great thing for you to check out. We're going to spend another half an hour with Paul. Right now, it is time for news. Going over the 24-hour local news center and more of the Schilling Show right after this.